I remember, in no particular order, a shiny inner wrist, steam rising from a wet sink as a hot frying pan is laughingly tossed into it, gouts of sperm circling a plug hole before being sluiced down the full length of a tall house, a river rushing nonsensically upstream, its wave and wash lit by half a dozen chasing torch beams. Another river, broad and grey, the direction of its flow disguised by a stiff wind exciting the surface. Bath water, long gone cold, behind a locked door. This last isn't something I actually saw, but what you end up remembering isn't always the same as what you have witnessed. We live in time. It holds us and moulds us, but I've never felt I understood it very well. And I'm not referring to theories about how it bends and doubles back or may exist elsewhere in parallel versions. No, I mean ordinary, everyday time, which clocks and watches assure us passes regularly. Tick-tock, click-clock. Is there anything more plausible than a second hand? And yet it takes only the smallest pleasure or pain to teach us time's malleability. Some emotions speed it up, others slow it down. Occasionally it seems to go missing, until the eventual point when it really does go missing, never to return. I'm not very interested in my school days and don't feel any nostalgia for them, but school is where it all began, so I need to return briefly to a few incidents that have grown into anecdotes, to some approximate memories which time has deformed into certainty. If I can't be sure of the actual events anymore, I can at least be true to the impressions those facts left. That's the best I can manage. There were 3 of us, and he now made the 4th. We hadn't expected to add to our tight number. Cliques and pairings had happened long before, and we were already beginning to imagine our escape from school into life. His name was Adrian Finn, a tall, shy boy who initially kept his eyes down and his mind to himself. For the first day or 2, we took little notice of him. At our school there was no welcoming ceremony, let alone its opposite, the punitive induction. We just registered his presence and waited. The masters were more interested in him than we were. They had to work out his intelligence and sense of discipline, calculate how well he'd previously been taught, and if he might prove scholarship material. On the 3rd morning of that autumn term, we had a history class with old Joe Hunt, wryly affable in his 3-piece suit, a teacher whose system of control depended on maintaining sufficient but not excessive boredom. Now, you'll remember that I asked you to do some preliminary reading about the reign of Henry VIII. Colin, Alex, and I squinted at one another, hoping that the question wouldn't be flicked like an angler's fly to land on one of our heads. Who might like to offer a characterization of the age? He drew his own conclusion from our averted eyes. Well, Marshall, perhaps. How would you describe Henry VIII's reign? Our relief was greater than our curiosity, because Marshall was a cautious know-nothing who lacked the inventiveness of true ignorance. He searched for possible hidden complexities in the question before eventually locating a response. There was unrest, sir. An outbreak of barely controlled smirking. Hunt himself almost smiled. Would you perhaps care to elaborate? Marshall nodded slow assent, thought a little longer, and decided it was no time for caution. I'd say there was great unrest, sir. Finn, then, are you up to this period? The new boy was sitting a row ahead and to my left. He had shown no evident reaction to Marshall's idiocies. Not really, sir, I'm afraid. But there is one line of thought according to which all you can truly say of any historical event, even the outbreak of the First World War, for example, is that something happened. Is there indeed? Well, that would put me out of a job, wouldn't it? After some sycophantic laughter, old Joe Hunt pardoned our holiday idleness and filled us in on the polygamous royal butcher. At the next break I sought out Finn. "I'm Tony Webster." He looked at me warily. "Great line to hunt." He seemed not to know what I was referring to. "About something happening." "Oh, yes. I was rather disappointed he didn't take it up." That wasn't what he was supposed to say. Another detail I remember. The three of us, as a symbol of our bond, used to wear our watches with the face on the inside of the wrist. It was an affectation, of course, but perhaps something more. It made time feel like a personal, even a secret thing. We expected Adrian to note the gesture and follow suit, but he didn't. Later that day, or perhaps another day, we had a double English period with Phil Dixon, a young master just down from Cambridge. He liked to use contemporary text and would throw out sudden challenges. Birth and copulation and death. That's what T.S. Eliot says it's all about. Any comments? He once compared a Shakespearean hero to Kirk Douglas in Spartacus. And I remember how, when we were discussing Ted Hughes's poetry, he put his head at a donnish slant and murmured, "Of course, we're all wondering what will happen when he runs out of animals." Sometimes he addressed us as gentlemen. Naturally, we adored him. That afternoon, he handed out a poem with no title, date, or author's name, gave us 10 minutes to study it, then asked for our responses. "Shall we start with you, Finn? Put simply, what would you say this poem is about?" Adrian looked up from his desk. "Eros and Thanatos, sir." Go on." "Sex and death," Finn continued, as if it might not just be the thickies in the back row who didn't understand Greek. "Or love and death, if you prefer, the erotic principle in any case, coming into conflict with the death principle, and what ensues from that conflict, sir." I was probably looking more impressed than Dixon thought healthy. "Webster, enlighten us further." "I just thought it was a poem about a barn owl, sir." This was one of the differences between the three of us and our new friend. We were essentially taking the piss, except when we were serious. He was essentially serious, except when he was taking the piss. It took us a while to work this out.